Welcome back, everybody, to What Really Matters. I'm Tablet Deputy Editor Jeremy Stern with you in Los Angeles. I'm here, as always, with Walter Russell Mead, Tablet news writer, Global View columnist at the Wall Street Journal, and distinguished fellow at Hudson. Let's start with this week's news. First story of the week. A growing chorus of academics, policymakers, and former tech employees argue the sky-high cost of working with AI models is boxing academic researchers out of the field, compromising independent study of the burgeoning technology, according to the Washington Post. As companies like Meta, Google, and Microsoft funnel billions of dollars into AI, a massive resource gap is building with even the country's richest universities. In 2022, the tech industry created 32 significant machine learning models, while academics produced only 3, a significant reversal from 2014, when the majority of AI breakthroughs originated in universities. Fei Li, a former Google employee and the co-director of the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI, said, quote, "The public sector is now significantly lagging in resources and talent compared to that of industry. This will have profound consequences because industry is focused on developing technology that is profit-driven, whereas public sector AI goals are focused on creating public goods." Close quote. Walter, is this news or faux news?
I don't know when I've heard so much nonsense. First of all, the idea that universities are not, AI research in universities isn't aimed at producing some kind of commercial product. Where did all this AI tech they're using in businesses come from? And my gosh, who did the businesses hire at inflated salaries? If not perhaps, I don't know, former university professors who struck gold and went to cash in on it? It really is just a complete tissue of horse hockey. We would get a whole raft of stories. Imagine alternative universe where the universities are some idiot is giving them the money to push into this. We would be reading about how the terrible AI budgets at our university are consuming all the resources that would otherwise go to promoting equal educational opportunity. And the enormous gap that is opening up in our society is the most horrific thing you've ever seen. This is just, there are some people who must always, everything that happens has to be a problem for them. In fact, this is what it looks like when it works. That is to say, when the technology was at an early stage and didn't appear to have any immediate impact, universities did what they can and do very well. They promoted basic research into emerging areas of knowledge. And then astonishingly, as this research reached a point where it's commercially viable, the private sector jumped in. Oh my gosh, goodness, what a disaster. I hope nothing like that ever happened in the field of electricity generation. Oh, wait, it did. Okay. So, the ability of intellectuals to look at a success story and find a disaster, that's one of the things that really endears us intellectuals, I think, to ordinary mortals.
You often hear the AI race, or maybe that race to develop AGI, compared to the Manhattan Project, which of course was not a private sector project, but did manage to attract the greatest scientific minds of the day. Is it a historical comparison that has made sense to you, or is this something else entirely?
Again, it just seems crazy. The reason that all of those scientists did it, worked on the Manhattan Project was, first of all, because no university actually could provide those resources. I mean, you either did it there or you did not do it at that level. But even more than that, it was because they wanted to beat Hitler. And they felt this compelling, there are other things that interest me more than how to blow up a city using nuclear fission. But if we don't do it and Hitler does, we are all so totally screwed. So fine, they all got together and did this. I'm sorry, AGI, the dynamics are enormously different. It's also the case that developing the atom bomb, there were a few there were some questions they had, but on the whole, Oppenheimer and his colleagues at the beginning had a fairly good idea of, this is not science in the sense of, gosh, a lot of things we don't know, we need to find out. This is, which AGI actually is much more of that. This is, okay, here is an incredibly difficult technical process, but theoretically, we think it's we know what to do. We just need immense resources and a lot of people in order to do it. Completely different. One is an engineering problem. One is an intellectual problem.
All right, our second story. The U.S. has airlifted staff from its embassy out of Haiti as violence engulfs the Caribbean country and gangs attack government buildings in Port-au-Prince. The country is mired in a fresh cycle of violence after rival gangs joined forces this month to launch a wave of attacks on the government. When Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry filled the void left by the assassination of the country's president in 2021, he did so over the protest of wide segments of the population, but with the full-throated support of the Biden administration. James Foley, a former U.S. ambassador to Haiti, told the Associated Press, quote, "The administration messed it up deeply. They rode this horse to their doom. It's the fruit of the choices we made," close quote. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will attend an emergency meeting in Jamaica on Monday with regional leaders to discuss Haiti. It is not clear whether Henry, who is stranded in Puerto Rico, will attend. Walter, news or phone news?
Well, I mean, if you live in Haiti, it's news and very tragic news. In the greater scheme of things, I'm often reminded of one of my favorite stories in the lore of American foreign policy, where I think back in the 30s, order had collapsed in Haiti, and the State Department people, maybe Sumner Welles, was saying to Franklin Roosevelt, "You're going to have to send troops down there." And Roosevelt said, "What's the matter with those people? Why aren't they governing themselves? Why do I have to do this?" And Wells said, "Oh, it's very chaotic down there. They don't even have a constitution." And Roosevelt says, "Nonsense. They have an excellent constitution. I wrote it myself." Because back when he'd been Assistant Secretary of the Navy in the Wilson administration, his office had sort of superintended this process. So during an earlier American occupation of Haiti, when everything had broken down. So, what an enormous surprise. Haiti is in chaos. What an enormous surprise an American administration failed to find a road out of that chaos. There's no news here. Again, unless you're a citizen of Haiti and there are armed gangs looting your house. It's a terrible tragedy, but it's very hard for me to see what certainly in 200 years, the U.S. has not been able to achieve much of good in Haiti. There's nothing magical about the Biden administration that suggests to me that it's found the key. I don't think so.
All right, final story of the week. Between 2007 and 2020, the average graduation rate at public high schools in America leapt from 74 to 87%. During this period, students notched up gains in course credits and grade point averages, yet SAT scores fell, and results from PISA, an international test of 15-year-olds, show that math and reading literacy are flat or down. A new analysis by The Economist suggests that U.S. public schools are lowering academic standards in order to enable more students to graduate. They assembled data on graduation rates and standardized test scores at 3,000 high schools across 6 states, and found that over 13 years, as low-performing schools have passed more students, the relationship between test scores and graduation rates has weakened. To keep graduation rates up, teachers have devised creative ways of raising grades, allowing students to retake exams, removing penalties for late assignments, and adjusting grading scales. Walter, is this news or faux news?
Well, first, in a way, it's really good news. It sounds like our high school students are getting better prepared every day for what they'll find in college, which is grade inflation, social promotion, if the goal of secondary school is to prepare students for post-secondary education, I think we can confidently say that America has never been better served by our high schools. There's something, I may write about it someday in Tablet, Jeremy. I've been thinking about something which I think of as the Great Slackening, which is to say, there's a lot of stuff that you used to have to memorize and stick in your head, but you don't have to do that anymore. Like, when I was a kid, you actually had to learn how to spell and memorize thousands of spelling words, and have tests every day in elementary school. And just this immense amount of labor. Now, and if you didn't do that, you would look like the worst illiterate and yokel in town, never be unemployable, all of those things. Now, again, spell check can really take care of that. And if you spent, an afternoon teaching kids how to use spell check, you could obviate all of that learning. Now, we're traditionalists in some ways, and so we haven't. And by the way, ditto multiplication tables when they don't even have to use calculators anymore. They've got to use their phones. So we're traditionalists, and then we say, well, but spelling, it's a really good thing, and I certainly learned a great deal from it, and etymology and the wealth of the language, blah, 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 blah. Right. So we keep it up, but people don't really believe in it anymore. The teachers don't really believe, as they're teaching spelling, if these kids don't learn this, they'll never be able to get a job. And the kids can sort of tell the teachers don't actually think this is so incredibly important. And now I'm going to be really shocking. Many of those students have learned to use spell checkers in their daily lives. So what we have is a lot of what we think of as education is actually empty performative rituals that once were necessary and fundamental. And now really, they're not totally useless. Am I glad I know all these spelling rules? Yes. What is it? I before E except after C, or when sounded like A, as in neighbor and way, or in leisure and seizure, either and whatever, seizure, and numerous other exceptions. That was the rule. I'm kind of glad I learned that. And yes, I have a rich sense of English, the historical development of the English language. But really? Okay. And so think of all the crap that kids are learning, quote, learning in school, that the teachers no longer think the kids have to know, and that the kids think the kids don't have to know. And yet, to pass all these tests and levels, you have to demonstrate competency. So in that sense, I would say if you want to look for where the real religious decline is in America, it's actually less in terms of formal religious congregations and doctrines than in the religion of education and of memorization as fundamental. These are turning into empty rituals, and I honestly, are the kids worse prepared? There are things the kids are not learning they should be learning. But a lot of what they're not learning is stuff they don't actually need to learn. And this, of course, tends to make them very cynical about adult life, very cynical about their teachers, makes them think that their parents and older people don't really know what's going on and aren't honest about it. So yeah, it's news, I guess, but not news in the way these hand-wringing, the kids are just not learning to spell anymore, right? It's not news in that way.
The Economist report blamed a lot of this on No Child Left Behind, the education reform law passed in 2002. Whether that's overdetermined or accurate or not. I mean, do you think there is a role here for kind of federal education reform legislation, or is improving these circumstances going to be more a matter of states experimenting, schools on an individual basis experimenting?
We don't actually know what kids should learn in elementary school today. We got an idea, but should stick with these examples. Should kids learn spelling and the multiplication tables? I don't know. Like I say, I'm kind of instinctively small c conservative about some of these things, but I'm not really convinced that we do need to be teaching this. So, but what else should we be teaching? Well, I haven't thought about it all that much, and I don't really know, and I doubt many other people do. I kind of think one of the things that we should be doing in the information revolution is we should all be spending less time in school, sitting passively at desks, having our heads stuffed with irrelevant material, and more time sort of doing things. Kids are naturally quite curious. If they're bored in school, it may be that there's a lot of really difficult, painful stuff that you have to learn whether you want to or not. But it may also be that you don't have to do that anymore, and we just institutionally haven't caught up with it. But before a federal law will do you any good, you have to have a social consensus about what there ought to be in that law. And at the moment, we simply do not.
All right, that does it for this week's news. Let's have the big conversation. All right, a lot's happened since Biden gave his State of the Union last Thursday, Walter. In the speech itself, the president announced a temporary U.S. military-run humanitarian aid pier in Gaza. In a hot mic comment after the speech, Biden told a senator that he and Netanyahu needed to have a, quote, come to Jesus moment. In an interview with MSNBC on Saturday, Biden said an Israeli invasion of Rafah would be a, quote, red line for the administration. The next day, Bibi rebutted the red line comment, claiming Israel's red line is preventing another October 7th massacre, which may still require eliminating Hamas from Rafah. Also on Saturday, New York Magazine ran a report based on sources from the Biden administration and also Israeli officials, claiming the White House has been exploring options for how it can help Netanyahu's coalition to collapse in order to get rid of Bibi, and that the administration has settled on the messaging of, quote, breaking with Netanyahu, but sticking with Israel, or as Kamala Harris put it, quote, not conflating the Israeli government with the Israeli people. On Monday, CIA Director William Burns released an intelligence assessment claiming, quote, distrust of Netanyahu's ability to rule has deepened and broadened across the public from its already high levels before the war, and we expect large protests demanding his resignation and new elections, close quote. And then finally, on Tuesday, just before we started recording, Walter, N12 News in Israel said Burns' report has Prime Minister Netanyahu, quote, fuming, and he has decided to embark upon a strong public and dramatic confrontation with Biden, close quote. So, Walter, we've talked in previous episodes about how much of this is kabuki theater, or also whether everyone in the Biden administration grasps the full consequences of all the signals they're sending out simultaneously. But with the White House apparently moving toward a full public break with Netanyahu, we might be at a kind of inflection point. So are we still in deft and clever political maneuvering territory, or are things actually spinning out of control?
Well, I'm not sure why that's either or, but nothing in what you said struck me as either particularly surprising or particularly consequential. From what I'm hearing, Israel has no plans to invade Gaza, invade Rafah in the immediate future. In some ways, it's probably convenient for Netanyahu, who does not, I think, really want tensions to explode during Ramadan, that, the Americans are taking the risk and saying, don't do this. But it's not, I'm not sure the Israelis even have their final plans for the attack. If you look at this whole plan for the relief corridor and so on, a ship is now sailing rather slowly from Virginia across the Atlantic Ocean through the Mediterranean Ocean, all right, to see at which point it will appear. And then I guess, so this is not, these events are not happening at a breakneck pace. In terms of the fact that an American Democratic president cannot stand Netanyahu and would give their firstborn child in order to get him out of government, tales of the Clinton administration, and it was very clear that the Clinton administration did everything it could to steer the Israeli voters away from Netanyahu in the 1990s. So none of this is anything that hasn't really hit the fan before. As it goes on, I mean, again, to some degree, both Biden and Bibi feed off this perception that they're feuding. It helps Biden with his left flank and it helps Bibi with his right flank. And those are actually, at this particular moment, the flanks both of them most want to, strengthen. So the more the White House says about, oh, that man Bibi, he's so awful, Israel is better than him, but boy, we're really pushing Bibi hard, hard, hard. the more all those Dearborn, Michigan voters are thinking, well, maybe there's a difference between Biden and Trump, and maybe I'll come home in November. But you're not actually losing, people on the left. I mean, on the right. And Bibi is like, boy, it's clear, the more the Americans hate me and tell the world they hate me, the more this tells everybody in Israel who doesn't really trust the Americans to do the right thing that I'm your guy. I'm the shield of Israel against foreign pressure. I'm the one, even if I don't actually have an invasion of Rafah going on at the moment. I'm the one. You want to fight Hamas? I'm your guy. So both sides are benefiting from the fight, and neither side is actually doing anything that fundamentally alters the status quo. Kabuki may not be the right word, but there's a difference between this and an actual struggle. Now, can things escalate? Yes. Could external events move us out of this space that we're in? Absolutely. But, Israeli politics is pretty contentious. These days, American politics is pretty contentious. People are yelling and screaming at each other all the time within those. Look at some of the Knesset debates and look at what people are saying about each other in the US Congress. So I think we should probably, whenever there's a war, one of the things that's hardest to do, but most important to do, is to keep your head. Everyone is screaming. There are terrible things happening. That's the nature of war. People are being killed. Things are burning down. Events are moving rapidly. All of this is true. Emotions are running incredibly high on all sides. All of this is true, including inside you. Emotions are running strongly. All right. Somebody needs to try to keep a cool head. And it's at times like this when clear analysis and calmness seem like, the wrong thing to do, that, it feels wrong. That's actually when it's most important. And so from what I see from this perspective, we are not yet in new territory in US-Israel relations as a result of the Gaza war. And I would say, if anything, the key lesson so far remains how durable Biden's support for Israel has been given all the contestation and fighting about it and the drama. We can also say, and how weak the Arab pressure either on Israel or on Biden or on the Europeans has been in terms of Arab government pressure. So this is still a story about the dog that didn't bark more than it is, the story of the rabid dog biting everyone.
How would you score Netanyahu's record of managing the U.S.-Israel relationship over the course of his tenure? So you mentioned the Clinton administration had issues with him. Obviously, the Obama administration had deep issues with Netanyahu. Trump, I think, has also decided that, Netanyahu is a kind of enemy after Bibi congratulated Biden for winning the 2020 election. Now the Biden administration too, but over the course of that period, Israel has become a wealthier, a more militarily powerful country. It's still getting, hundreds of separate arms sales from the Biden administration since October 7th. So has he actually managed this better than it might look?
Well, look, I think the thing that he wanted most, he's failed to do, which is to get the U.S. to really take Israel's part in the confrontation with Iran. That's what Bibi has wanted more than anything else. And he hadn't gotten it. He came closer under Trump, but even there, he didn't get it. So I don't think Bibi, looking at this whole thing, would say, boy, I've got the Americans exactly where I want them. I've been able to achieve everything I wanted to achieve. On the other hand, in the absence of that, he's been able to get some concessions and get things done. But the point you're making about economic growth and the political outreach to the Arab countries and so on, let's just remember that while America is Israel's most important bilateral relationship, getting America policy right isn't the whole secret to Israeli success and survival. So I would say that Bibi has not succeeded at the most important thing. In my view, Americans haven't succeeded at the most important thing of having a sensible Iran policy. And without that, you can't have much success in the Middle East, and we don't have it and haven't had it. And I wish they'd actually taken a bit more advice from Bibi. Not everything, but there are a lot of things where I think he did see more clearly than some of our presidents. Where things go now is up to, I see the Iranians are starting to deepen their relationships with Syria and Iraq, even as they deepen their relationships with Russia. The closing of the Red Sea has increased Egypt's economic difficulties because in addition to your sort of tourism going away, when you have random terror groups bombing things and shooting missiles, the tolls on Red Sea cargo are a very important source of foreign exchange for Egypt. So the region is going badly. One core reason is American policy has still not really faced the actual nature of our difficulties there. And Bibi was not able to get the Americans to do what we need to do for our and his sake. But I can't totally blame him for that. It's not like people sometimes think that America has an Israel button. We can push a certain button and they'll have no choice but to do what we want. We don't have that. The truth is that Israel doesn't have an America button. There's no button that the prime minister can push and America just obeys.
All right, that does it for the big conversation. Let's end on the tip of the week. Another reader request this week, Walter, this one from Andy in Delhi, who wants to know, quote, what are your favorite religious sites in the world?
Religious sects?
Religious sites.
Oh, sites. Okay, well, I have to say that, since Andy is writing from Delhi, I would say that, seeing Benares, Varanasi, and the Ganges at sunset is something that is a very moving thing that people ought to do. It's hard to say that St. Peter's in Rome is something you should miss. And I noticed, I saw this a little bit in India too, but in Japan years ago, I went to the temples. There was a number of temples in Kyoto and Nara. And what impressed me was that they're religious sites, but they're also sort of the earliest theme parks, in the sense that there are lots of activities, and a lot of them are family activities. So one of the temples had a small carved sort of tunnel through one of the wooden pillars in it. And the idea was that if someone could crawl through that, their cycle of reincarnation could end. And so naturally people are having their little 2-year-old toddlers crawl through the space. There was another place where there were 3 waterfalls and a dipper. And one waterfall would give you health, and one waterfall would give you wealth, and one waterfall would give you happiness and love. And you could only drink from 2. So you saw people at the dipper. Although I heard from one of the monks that there was somebody in the village supposedly had come up and at night alone drank 3 times out of the wealth bucket. So there were lots of things you could do. And that was just a very interesting kind of picture maybe into the role that religion played in human life before modernization, before religion, became as much as it is now something of doctrine or highly ritualized and separated from the rest of life. So I would say, go to the Vatican, go to the Ganges, and try to get to the temples in Kyoto and Nara.
All right, there you have it. Thanks to our producer, Noam Bloom. Thanks to Will Cummings at Hudson and my co-host, Walter Russell Mead. I'm Jeremy Stern. We'll see you next week. And until then, please go rate and review us. This helps other people find the show.